Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to our presentation. We are from Group 1 and we would like to talk to you about the structure of firms. First, let me introduce my team. My name is Sinta Karunia, the leader of this group. And my member are Nuliandari, Putri Julianti Tampu Bolon, Endang Yulianti, and Ruth Maranata Silalahi. And for the first presentations would be explained by Nuliandari.
Okay, I will explain about the introduction and size structure of UK industry. The first introduction, there has been an increase in the level of industrial concentration in the United Kingdom over the last 100 years. In 1999, the largest 100 companies produced 60% of manufacturing output. By 1990, this had risen to around 30%. Okay, the second, the size structure of UK industry. The firm or enterprise is the organization has a wall and it might be comprised of several units or establishments. Small firm like the corner shop will mostly be enterprise with only one establishment. Large firm like Sainsbury will have many establishments as they have branches in most towns. Okay, the table 90.1 shows the top 10 companies in the United Kingdom using two of these measures, and it illustrates the point that different measures of the size of a firm will give different rankings. Some of these names will be familiar to the reader, while others are less so. Compass Group plc, for example, is a food service organization which provides catering and support service to its clients. For instance, we can see ranking by turnover. First is Vodafone Group plc, second Tesco plc, third Aviva plc, and etc. And beside ranking by employment, we can see for the first one is Compass Group plc, second Unilever plc, third Tesco plc, and etc. Okay, now we are going to focus on size structure of UK industry by employment. 2003, the table shows that smaller firm predominates in the term of number with 98.5% of firm employing fewer than 100 employees. In terms of employment, however, this firm account for only 34.2% of the total level of employment in manufacturing. At the other end of the scale, establishment with over 500 employees account for only 0.4% of the total number, but 53.8% of total employment. The pattern of the structures varies across industries in above time. In the last 20 years, there seems to have been an increase in the importance of small firms and a decline in the importance of large firms in their contribution to employment.
Now, we are going to focus on organization's growth and the unique case. In industrial economic, firm size is seen as a function of growth. It is suggested that although there is no limit on the size of a firm, there are limits on the rate of expansion. Growth rates are seen to depend on different things by different theories, including the availability of finance, the level of consumer demand, and the limitations of management. Growth could be an explicit objective of management or could be necessary for the successful operation of the firms. Growth could be a managerial objective if it brings benefits to management, such as greater security and higher remunerations. It could be that the market in which the business operates is expanding and growth is necessary to maintain market share. Growth enables the organization to reap the benefits of economies of scale. Growth enables firms to diversify into other markets, which means that risk can be spread further. Industries which are capital intensive will of necessity be comprised of large firms. In the area of product development, it is possible that the necessary research and development could only be carried out by large companies. Growth could be pursued as a defensive strategy. On the table, 9.3 provides as illustration of how the state objective of EU firms for engaging in major activity can change over time. It was expected that the increased competition would force companies to concentrate more upon their core activities, and as a result, diversification as a motive for major fall from 17.6% in 1985 to 2.1% of case in 1992. And now I'm going to show you guys a mini case about organization's growth. Table 9.4 shows the market leaders in the UK together with their percentage percentage share of listening hours and advertising revenue in 2003. As can be seen, the merger took place between the two market leaders as measured in both ways. That's all for me, and will continue explained by Putri Julianti Tampubolan.
Okay, here I will continue the explanation from my friend. Okay, explanation about growth method. Companies grow in size internally as part of normal business operation or externally through takeovers and merger. The first, internal growth. Growth is a natural process for many companies starting small, capturing a market segment, and they continuing to grow either by producing more of the same item or by expanding their product line. The second, external growth. Growth by acquisition is called external growth and occurs through takeovers and merger. Merger is the voluntary union of the two companies with the approval of the management of both companies, the result of which is the creation of a new legal identity. The third, horizontal merger. A horizontal merger is a merger between companies at the same stage in the production process. For example, between two car manufacturers or between two brewers. Therefore, vertical merger. Vertical merger involves companies at different stages of the same production process. It is vertical because it runs along the production process from raw material extraction to distribution. The fifth, conglomerate merger. This merger is neither vertical or horizontal but involves a merger between companies involved in producing different goods. The last, grow with merger and takeovers. Growth through merger and takeovers first appeared in the United States more than 100 years ago, and merger activity then to come in waves. Number 1, internal sources. As part of its operation, the company will generate income in the form of profit. Some of this profit will be distributed in the form of dividends to shareholders. The rest can be used for reinvestment and to finance growth. The second, external sources. As the size and availability of retained earnings will be limited, most companies will also have to find other sources of finance for expansion. There are many sources of external finance, and a typical company's capital structure will consist of this combination. The third, bank. Banks provide short and medium-term financing to companies in the form of loans or overdraft. This relative cost depends on how the company wants to use the funds. Therefore, capital market. The capital market is the place where stock and shares are traded, and as such is the main provider of long-term finance for companies. The main institution in the capital market is the stock exchange. The capital market consists of two parts. The main part which involves the buying and selling of shares and new shares, and the secondary section which involves the buying and selling of existing shares and shares. It is therefore the main part of the market which is the sources of finance for the company.
Okay guys, you can see on the slide the table 9.8. Classification of firms by employment size. There are number of employees, type of firm. 0 to 9 micro business, 10 to 99 small enterprises, 100 to 4,900 medium-sized enterprises, 500 large enterprises. Well, the next presentation will be explained by my partner.
Okay, I will continue this presentation. Next, multinational. Multinational, at the opposite end of the scale from the very small business, are companies which have the capability to produce goods or services in more than one country but where control usually resides in a central location. Multinational are often well-known household names, as the example below illustrate. The first, UK multinational BP GlaxoSmithKline. Second, European multinational Nestle Volkswagen. Third, USA multinational General Motors IBM. Next slide, executive search. Services have the following characteristics which differentiate them from goods, and these characteristics have implications for the structure of the industry concerned. The first, intangibility. Services are intangible while goods are tangible. This means that it is impossible to sample a service before it is purchased. Second, inseparability. There is often no separation between consumption and production of services. Third, heterogeneity. Given the nature of services, they are difficult to standardize. Often each unit of a service sold is different. This stems from the central role that the buyer plays in service production. Next, perishability. Services are perishable. They are destroyed in the process of consumption and cannot be destroyed. Last, irreversibility. Many services are irreversible in that once consumed, they cannot be returned and nor can faults be rectified.
That's all our presentations. Huge thanks for attention and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.